The cameras flashed. The crowd froze. And just like that, Hollywood had a completely new obsession.
Oh, it was instantaneous, like looking at a ghost.
Welcome to Starscope Report. Join Jordan and Jamie as they uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and viral influencer scandals. From red carpet surprises to social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame.
And today's headline is definitely one of those massive social media controversies.
Yeah, the headline for this deep dive is Dakota Johnson's Marilyn Monroe transformation leaves fans stunned.
Stunned is, well, it's putting it mildly, honestly.
Seriously, if I asked you to picture Marilyn Monroe right now, you immediately see it, right? The platinum blonde waves, the white dress over the subway grate, the beauty mark, it is burned into our brains.
Right, it's a globally recognized logo at this point.
Exactly. But what if I told you that the image currently burned into your brain is essentially a carefully engineered corporate product? One created by a 1950s studio machine that Monroe herself actually fiercely fought against.
Which is the wildest part of this whole thing.
It is. And right now, in 2026, the internet is absolutely at war over that exact same image. Dakota Johnson's transformation into Marilyn for a new film is leaving fans outraged and furiously protective.
It is a total firestorm. People are arguing, and if you venture into certain Reddit threads, they are completely losing their minds.
Which is exactly why we're doing deep dive into this today. We have a massive stack of sources to figure out what is really going on here. We've got entertainment news from Gracia, Glitter Magazine, World of Real.
We've also got the official press releases and the raw internet reactions.
Right. And to really ground this historically, we're pulling from an incredible academic dissertation by Anne Helen Peterson on the history of the gossip industry.
Because you can't understand the outrage without the history.
Exactly. Our mission today is to explore why her image remains this fiercely guarded cultural lightning rod. But wait till you hear what the internet actually did when the photos dropped.
Oh, it gets intense.
If you're loving these Hollywood twists, make sure you're subscribed. By the way, we've got even crazier stories ahead. But first, let's unpack the actual project that started this whole mess.
The premise itself is actually fascinating. It's a short film called Flesh Impact, directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, and it's premiering at the 2026 Venice International Film Festival, marking what would have been Monroe's 100th birthday.
Right. And what's crucial to understand right out of the gate is that Gyllenhaal is not, she's not giving us a traditional biopic.
Thank goodness, because we've seen those.
We have. We saw the intense controversy over Blonde with Ana de Armas. We saw Michelle Williams do it. Flesh Impact is doing something entirely different. It's speculative fiction.
A multiverse story, basically.
Exactly. Gyllenhaal is asking, what if she hadn't died at 36?
Right.
What if she had 60 more years to herself?
The logline is wild. It centers on this mysterious older woman auditioning for a play in a very small, gritty New York City black box theater.
Just a totally stripped-down environment.
Right. And as she describes her past acting experience to the director, these massive secrets about her identity start bubbling up.
And to pull this off, they use two actresses. Dakota Johnson plays Monroe in the flashbacks at the absolute height of her fame.
Which makes sense, since Gyllenhaal directed her before in The Lost Daughter.
Right. And then for the present day, we have the 93-year-old Oscar winner Ellen Burstyn playing the older version of Marilyn.
The pedigree is undeniable. Burstyn is actually getting the Golden Lion for Lifetime Achievement at Venice this year, and Gyllenhaal is the jury president.
Plus, they have top-tier artisans like Karen Murphy on production design.
But I want to pause on that title for a second. Flesh Impact.
Yeah.
Where does that actually come from? Because it's very evocative.
It's a brilliant pull. That phrase comes from the legendary director Billy Wilder.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was trying to articulate Monroe's specific screen presence. He couldn't just call her a good actress. He said she had flesh impact.
Flesh Impact.
Meaning her flesh photographed so real that audiences felt like they could literally reach out and touch her through the movie screen.
That is a beautiful tribute to her power. But I have to push back a little on the whole setup of this project.
Okay, lay it on me.
Because when you dig into the press release, there is a glaring contradiction here.
The funding.
Yes. On one hand, you have this very lofty, artistic, black box theater exploration of an aging artist's vulnerabilities. But on the other hand, it's fully funded and presented by Genesis, the luxury car company.
You're hitting on the exact tension that defines modern indie filmmaking.
It feels like a massive paradox. An esoteric art film funded by a car company that clearly just wants to align its vehicles with classic Hollywood glamour.
It does feel cynical when you look at it that way.
Right. Like, is this about reclaiming her story or just another way to commodify the Marilyn brand for a corporate sponsor?
You could definitely view it through that lens. But consider how short films are actually financed in 2026.
They don't make money.
Exactly. They don't have theatrical runs. Without Genesis footing the bill, Gyllenhaal simply doesn't get the budget for someone like Ellen Burstyn or Karen Murphy.
So it's a necessary pact with the devil.
Pretty much. Genesis gets the cultural cachet of Venice and Marilyn Monroe, and Gyllenhaal gets the cash to make her art.
The age-old Hollywood trade-off. But whenever corporate funding meets a cultural icon, the lines start to blur. And speaking of blurring, that specific word actually caused the massive internet firestorm we're seeing right now.
Oh, it absolutely did. The backlash didn't even start with the film itself.
No, it started with a promotional rollout. Vanity Fair dropped the first-look images of Dakota Johnson in the platinum wig, and places like Reddit and World of Real just completely exploded.
And that's not even the wildest part. Later in the deep dive, we'll talk about the historical twist nobody saw coming regarding her own rebellion.
Stick around for that, because it changes everything. But right now, we have to talk about Maggie Gyllenhaal's quote to the press.
Right. Gyllenhaal was asked about the fact that Dakota Johnson doesn't bear an obvious physical resemblance to Monroe.
Which is true, she doesn't.
No, she doesn't. And Gyllenhaal admitted she hesitated at first, but then she said, and I quote, "I thought, that's ridiculous. Who cares? I don't know that anyone even really totally knows what Marilyn looks like because she's been so commodified and made into this myth, and she's very blurry in my mind."
Who cares? And nobody knows what she looks like. I mean, to say that about Marilyn Monroe.
It was pouring gasoline on the internet.
Fans called the, quote, unhinged and pretentious. And honestly, they made a fair, objective point. She is literally one of the most photographed human beings in history.
Right, especially for the pre-camera phone era.
Every inch of her face was documented. They call her physical appearance blurry. Felt incredibly dismissive to these commenters.
And that anger bled directly into the critiques of Dakota Johnson. The Reddit threads were absolutely ruthless.
What were they saying?
They zeroed in on the physical differences. They argued Johnson lacks Monroe's natural charisma and her famous curves. People said she looked like Madonna, trying to look like Marilyn.
Ouch. I also saw comparisons to Emilia Clarke. And there was this massive wave of cynicism about Hollywood nepotism.
Oh, the Nepo baby discourse was everywhere.
Yeah, dismissing the whole project as a Nepo baby director hiring a Nepo baby actor. But beneath the personal attacks, there seemed to be this deep fatigue. People were just begging Hollywood to let her rest.
We saw that sentiment across all our sources. After Ana de Armas, after countless documentaries, the public is exhausted. They feel she's been mined for profit enough.
I hear that, but I want to challenge this intense internet vitriol for a second. Because when I read these furious comments, I have to ask, are these fans actually trying to protect Marilyn the person? Or are they just obsessively gatekeeping the brand?
What do you mean by that?
Well, it reminds me of a terrible art appraiser. Imagine someone buys a lost Picasso, and instead of looking at the emotion in the brushstrokes, they immediately pull out a magnifying glass to check if the canvas weave matches a Wikipedia article.
They miss the art completely.
Exactly. They're obsessed with the authentication. That's what these commenters feel like. They're demanding a flawless, physical wax figure instead of being open to the emotional interpretation Gyllenhaal is offering.
That is a phenomenal analogy. Are we defending Norma Jean, the complex human being, or are we defending Marilyn Monroe TM, the pristine product?
Because if you look closely, people aren't mad her soul is being misrepresented. They're mad the wig doesn't look right.
Which is wild. But what's truly fascinating is that this desire to possess her exact physical image isn't a new internet phenomenon.
No, it goes way back.
It's the direct result of how her image was manufactured in the first place.
Which brings us perfectly to Anne Helen Peterson's academic dissertation on the history of the gossip industry. This document is a goldmine.
It really is. It explains so much about the mechanics of the 1950s.
Right, because if you want to understand why the public in 2026 feels so possessive of her image, you have to look at how they were trained to view her back then. Peterson's research highlights how Monroe fundamentally disrupted the dominant blueprint of female stardom.
To understand her impact, you really have to understand the era. The ideal was the wholesome, domesticated mother.
Like Janet Leigh or Esther Williams.
Yeah.
Approachable, safe.
Exactly. But Marilyn was none of those things. Her entire foundational image was built on overt, unapologetic sexuality.
And she wasn't just a passive object. She weaponized that sexuality to gain immense power and generate massive wealth for 20th Century Fox.
She was a major financial asset. She was carrying the studio.
But the common myth today is that she was just this tragic, helpless victim of the studio system. Peterson outlines exactly how Monroe actively rebelled against it.
And to grasp how radical that was, you have to understand the 1950s contract system.
It's not like getting an acting job today.
Not at all. If you were under contract, the studio practically owned you. They dictated what movies you made. And if you refused a role, they didn't just fire you, they put you on suspension.
Which meant you couldn't work anywhere else, right?
Right. You weren't getting paid, and your career was put in the freezer. Terrifying financial leverage.
But Marilyn fought it anyway. She was incredibly shrewd. When Fox tried to force her into a string of derivative, dumb, blonde roles, she balked. She actually took a suspension rather than star in a movie called The Girl with the Pink Tights.
She called their bluff. She understood her leverage.
And then she used it brilliantly. She only agreed to do the musical Succussion. There's no business like show business as a hardball negotiation tactic.
Just to secure the lead in the 7-year itch.
Yes, which gave us the iconic white dress over the subway. Great image. She played the game, and this is the crazy part, she truly shocked the industry by blowing up the board entirely.
This is my favorite part of her history.
She walked away from her 20th Century Fox contract, moved to New York, and formed her own independent production company.
Practically unheard of for a woman at that time.
Completely. And to top it off, she married the highly intellectual playwright Arthur Miller. She was demanding intellectual respect in a way few stars ever had.
But the press absolutely could not handle it. The gossip industry fundamentally short-circuited trying to process this new Marilyn.
How did they react? Because Peterson's dissertation talks about how the magazines actually punished her.
Oh, they did. The gossip magazines, like Photoplay, relied on simple narratives. When Monroe said she wanted to do serious acting, specifically playing Grushenka in The Brothers Karamazov, the press mocked her.
They wrote these vicious articles claiming she probably wanted to play one of the brothers.
Exactly. They publicly humiliated her for daring to step outside her assigned box.
It's so similar to what we see today with creators on TikTok or Instagram.
How so?
Well, an influencer goes viral for a specific aesthetic, right? A dance or comedy. The algorithm rewards them. But the second they try to pivot and do something serious, the algorithm punishes them. Their audience turns on them, demanding they go back to what made them famous.
That is the exact same dynamic. The only difference is that in the 1950s, the algorithm was run by a handful of studio executives and magazine editors.
They couldn't reconcile the sex symbol with the serious artists.
So they forced her into a rigid binary. They engineered two simple tropes: the sex pot versus the frightened child or lonely victim.
They completely flattened her. They just couldn't compute a woman who was highly sexual, incredibly famous, and a shrewd business operator. Vamp or victim, that was it.
And that is the core tragedy, because the internet public today is still using that exact same flattened algorithm to define her.
When Reddit commenters reject Dakota Johnson because her curves aren't right, they are unwittingly enforcing the exact same rigid boundaries that Fox programmed 70 years ago.
We've inherited a manufactured myth, and we're guarding it with our lives.
Stay tuned and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next, because we are about to get into the ultimate debate. Because her life was tragically cut short at 36, that myth was permanently frozen in amber. Which brings us back to Flesh and Pack and the massive debate on World of Real.
The grand what-if scenario. If she had lived to be 100, what would her legacy look like?
The commenters got really into the weeds on this. There's a fierce divide.
You have the highly cynical camp, the skeptics. They argue that if Monroe hadn't died young, her legacy would have faded.
Their argument is rooted in cinematic history, right?
Yeah. They point out she relied heavily on her youth and a highly stylized aesthetic. She simply wouldn't have survived the massive cinematic shift in the 1970s.
Right. The collapse of the old studio system and the rise of new Hollywood. The gritty, raw, naturalistic acting. Think Jane Fonda, Barbra Streisand, Faye Dunaway in Network, or Taxi Driver.
The skeptics argue Marilyn didn't have the acting range of a Katharine Hepburn to make that transition to gritty realism.
Plus, it was heavily documented she was notoriously difficult on set,
Yeah.
struggling with lines, chronic lateness.
The cynical view is the industry would have left her behind as she aged out of the blonde bombshell demographic and became too expensive to insure.
But then you have the fierce defenders in the comments. And they counter that her legend was already larger than life while she was still breathing.
They compare her to Sophia Loren.
who transitioned from a young sex symbol to an elder stateswoman of cinema. They argue Marilyn had an indelible star quality that would have survived any era.
But all this debate forces us to look at the darkest Hollywood adage of all. Dying young is a great career move.
It's incredibly macabre, but historically potent.
They lump her in with James Dean, Elvis Presley.
John Lennon, Kurt Cobain.
Tragic, early deaths permanently freeze these people as perfect, unaging icons.
They never get old. They never make a string of embarrassing direct-to-video movies in the 80s. They never go on a late-night talk show and say something that ruins their reputation.
They never disappoint us. Death seals the myth. It protects the brand from the messy reality of human aging.
So hearing all this, I want to pose a poignant philosophical question to you, the listener. Is the real reason people are so resistant to Maggie Gyllenhaal's film because it threatens that pristine, tragic myth?
It's a cruel irony, isn't it?
It really is. Flesh Impact is actively trying to give Monroe her agency back. It's imagining her growing old, overcoming her demons, creating art as a 93-year-old woman. And the public is violently rejecting it.
Because they might actually prefer her frozen in time as a beautiful memory. They prefer the clean aesthetic tragedy over the messy reality of an aging woman.
Which raises an uncomfortable question about our relationship with celebrity culture. We claim to love these figures. We claim we want to protect them from exploitation.
But in reality, we fiercely guard the static versions of them because they're easier to consume.
A 90-year-old Marilyn Monroe navigating the 21st century challenges all our neat narratives. It demands we see her as a fully realized, flawed human being, not just a ghost on a dorm room poster.
It shatters the glass case we put her in, and people hate when you mess with the glass case.
So what does this all mean? We've gone from a controversial casting announcement at the Venice Film Festival all the way to a century-long struggle to control exactly who Marilyn Monroe was.
We've seen how the gossip machine flattened her, how the studios tried to own her, and how the internet is still fighting to protect that flattened image.
Ultimately, the dialogue around Dakota Johnson isn't really about a platinum wig or corporate funding or whether Gyllenhaal's memories are blurry. It's about our collective refusal to let go of a myth and our fear of letting our icons be human.
Which leaves you with a final thought to mull over today.
If Marilyn Monroe had actually lived to see her 100th birthday, if she was sitting in that black box theater in New York City right now, would she have even wanted to be remembered for the Hollywood image that completely consumed her?
Or, having finally broken free of the studio system, would she have reinvented herself entirely?
Imagine her finally escaping the very spotlight that we, as a culture, still refuse to let her step out of. Just a woman, invisible in a crowd, living the quiet life she was never allowed to have.
A powerful thought. We're so obsessed with keeping her famous, we never stopped to wonder if she wanted to be forgotten.
You've been listening to Starscope Report, where Jordan and Jamie uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.